This episode of the Everything Matters podcast is brought to you by belegendary.coach, where we transform leaders into legends. Are you a senior leader, entrepreneur, or executive looking to take your leadership to the next level? Are you dealing with things such as imposter syndrome, concerns with whether or not your leadership is lingering long after you've completed FaceTime? Looking for new and innovative ways to connect with your team and to gain buy-in from stakeholders that you deal with on a daily basis? If any of this sounds like something that you're dealing with and you would like to take your leadership to an extraordinary level, your effectiveness to a legendary level, visit belegendary.coach. That's www.belegendary.coach and schedule your free performance analysis today. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the next episode of the Everything Matters podcast. My special guest today is Chris Witherspoon. Talk about a TV head. Wow. Chris is absolutely brilliant and uncannily passionate about entertainment. He's making a huge impact in the content creator space as well with this new app that he just launched called PopViewers that we'll get more into inside of this interview. Chris is an entrepreneur and entertainment journalist and a producer with a signature accessible approach to media and to culture. His latest tech entertainment venture is currently in the works and completing its first round of seed funding. Chris served as entertainment correspondent for Fandango and CNN and was the entertainment editor for NBC's thegrio.com. He still regularly appears on MSNBC, Today, The Wendy Williams Show, and NBC's Nightly News, and has interviewed catch the likes of this list: Meryl Streep, Tom Hanks, Oprah Winfrey, Will Smith, Viola Davis, Hugh Jackman, Denzel Washington. It's incredible. Harrison Ford and Kerry Washington. Chris got his first taste of media as an intern at ABC's Good Morning America, and he's never looked back since. He's an alumnus of the prestigious NBC PAGE program and of Ohio University. Chris also was one of 11 Black and/or Latino founders and CEOs that were featured on Peacock's recent docu-series that was released in February called Founding in Color. Please go check out that series. It's a really powerful story about some of the struggles and challenges that Black and Latino and minority founders face when trying to fund and get their ideas out to the world. Please join me in welcoming my friend, my guy, Chris Witherspoon, to the Everything Matters podcast. Chris, let's get it popping, my man. Chris, welcome to the Everything Matters podcast, man. So great to have you on the show. I'm excited about this conversation. Just reading a little bit about you, and learning about what you're up to, man. I'm so inspired, and I'm just really, want to hear as much as I can. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and being with me here today.
Bradford, thank you for having me, and you're kicking it off with great energy. So I appreciate that. I received that. I'm feeling it. So let's go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's get it, baby. Let's get it. So Chris, I know right now you're currently residing in NY, and we were kind of chatting off camera before we started this podcast, and I said, "So Chris, are you in DC?" And you kind of got like, "What? Don't ever tell a New Yorker they're in DC." So, so I know I know that you live in New York now, but tell us about where you're from and what was your childhood like? Where'd you grow up?
Yeah, and Bradford, I've been in New York now for about 18 years. So all your listeners, please let me know, am I officially in New York yet? I still don't know. It's a hot topic right now at my social circle. I don't know for sure if I can say I'm New York, if I'm a New Yorker, but I've been here 18 years. I ate it. I survived. What do you say, Bradford?
You know what, Chris? Hey, in my book, Chris, you're a New Yorker, bro. But you can talk to some of the New Yorkers. They real hard about giving a New York license. So you got to figure that out on your own.
They don't play. No, but to answer your question, awesome. I grew up in Ohio, a very small town called Warren, Ohio. And I tell people a lot of times that my town was a really small town. We didn't travel a whole lot. I didn't go on a plane until I was 21 years old to come to New York City to intern for Good Morning America. But growing up in Warren, it's like my one sort of lifeline and outlet to dream was TV. My family, we struggled a lot economically, financially. I came from a two-parent home, but my parents just had a really hard time making ends meet. So we were evicted 3 different times, moved around a lot. But I will say we always had a TV, the kind with the antenna on it. We didn't have cable.
They tell your age, Chris. They tell your age now.
For real. No, we even had an antenna in the 90s. But
oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm still telling my age. But we didn't even have cable. And I always say TV was like that third parent in my household. It helped kind of shape how big I could dream. And I lived my life, vicariously through these different characters that I was watching on TV after school, on the weekends, whether it was Oprah after school, all the different talk shows, or the different after school specials. And then I would go all the way to the 18 in prime time. I had the TV schedules memorized, Bradford. And then on the off chance we saw a movie in theaters, I would also just like really fall in a way that most kids and young adults weren't doing. And it inspired me to come to New York City and try to be in the room where it actually happens in entertainment. Yeah.
And you did that, man. You did that. And I'm excited to talk about, what that's been like for you. So I know that, are you currently a journalist, Chris, or is that where you started out, kind of cutting your teeth in entertainment? Like, how did the entertainment journalism piece come around? Did you study journalism in school too? It's another question I had.
Yeah. So, I didn't study it in school. I went to college in Ohio University, which was a really big deal for me. I was the first person in my family to get to go to college. And it was 4 hours away from Warren. So I was going away, even though it was still Ohio. Okay. I was going away from college. I didn't see nobody. I got to recreate myself. But I studied communications. And it's funny, Bradford, I wanted to get into the journalism school, but I had bad grades. So when I first went to school, I was studying sports medicine. Long story. Too long to go in right now, but it was not the major for me, and I had to switch into communications. But before, I tried to get into journalism, into the school journalism, Scripps School of Journalism, which was one of the best schools for journalism in the Midwest, in Ohio, but in the Midwest. Right. I didn't get in, so I studied communications, and that just really helped me kind of lean into more what I already do, which is talk a lot and tell stories and learn how to sort of build campaigns and market messaging, which is kind of what you do when you become a journalist and you talk. So I wound up doing that. I got into the Good Morning America internship, which I mentioned to you, my first time flying. And fast forward, I got into the NBC Page program, which was a really hard program to get into for a lot of folks that were just aspiring young media professionals, whether it's journalism or folks who wanted to do public relations, marketing, whatever. You're working in 30 Rock. You're giving tours of all the different studios. You're rubbing shoulders with, back then, Matt Lauer. I'm aging myself. Matt Lauer, Peacock, all the SNL cast members were giving tours of their studios, working the shows. And the bug bit me there. I knew then that I know I didn't have the skill set to be an entertainment journalist, but I knew I wanted to be at the Today Show, on the Today Show one day, on MSNBC, talking about pop culture. And I saw some folks doing it. And a lot of them didn't have necessarily traditional background to get there. So I was like, what, I can do this. I worked my way from being an assistant to 2 different executives to working at thegrio.com. Back when NBC News owned The Grio, about 10 years ago. And I got a job as associate editor for them. So I'm writing pieces and I'm learning kind of how to write stories. Then a new boss came in about 9 months in. Her name is Joy Reid. And she hosts a show on MSNBC. A lot of your folks might know the show, The Readout. And she was the first person to say, Chris, you have a gift, you have talent, you should be on camera, you should be, covering pop culture for us. I'm going to begin working to get you as a managing editor, working to get you on MSNBC, working to get you on the Today Show. I'm going to step in this gap and advocate for you, even though you might not have this background or this skill set. You got the skill set. You're good. So I began doing a lot of TV. I began when Whitney Houston died. February 12th, 2012 was my first time ever going on TV. And it was baptism by fire, Bradford. I had no idea what I was doing. It's just like fill the air, answer the questions about Whitney Houston. And I knew all the answers because I was really, as an editor, I was covering her so much. But to answer the question, I did it. I loved doing it. It was my full-time focus. Then I shifted from being a journalist about 4 years ago to kind of begin the ideation process of PopViewers and kind of thinking about how to grow this company, how to breathe life into the idea. And then when we launched a year and a half ago, I began doing TV again. I began agreeing to go on as an entertainment contributor to different platforms because it was a way for me to evangelize PopViewers. And PopViewers, when we talk about it a little bit, it really leaned into what I had been covering for 10 years, which was the emerging popular TV shows and movies.
Yeah, really great, man. Yeah, I definitely want to talk more about PopViewers. It's a pretty interesting concept that you've actually developed there and founded. So great. So it looks like you also got into film production just looking on the internet, it says that you helped produce a couple of films, Rage and Middleman. Is that accurate?
I'm laughing because
it's the internet, man. Thank the internet, man.
My name is very unique, and I love that. But Chris Witherspoon, there's like 3 of us who are Googleable. There's that guy who produced those 2 films, and there's also someone else who's like a CEO of like a
I saw him too.
Yeah, and me and him look alike. The one who did the 2 films, I don't know what he looks like, but it's so funny that it's not me. There's another IMDb that is me, where you see my TV work, but I will say, Bradford, you're getting a little bit of an exclusive. I am working this year as an EP of 2 scripted series. So 2 scripted TV shows that have been dreams of mine that I've had for the past like 5 years. We're finally at a place where we're pitching these to a couple different streaming networks and platforms. So I might just very soon be that guy, but not the one that did the other 2 films you named.
All right, cool. Well, you got to come back on and talk to us about those projects once you get those off the ground. You get everything situated. Come back and talk to us about that and help us. I'll help you promote it. All right.
Thank you.
So great stuff, man. Great stuff. So that goes right into really like, you gave a lot of context around how you fell into this space around television and entertainment, and I grew up in a small town myself. And I, like you, also knew what shows came on, what time they came on. I spent a lot of time outside also, but like, man, cartoons in the afternoon, Chris, I knew Speed Racer was going to be on at 3:15, bro. I was sitting in front of that TV with my bowl of Fruit Loops, the Apple Jacks. I was watching Speed Racer, man. The Jetsons in the morning while I'm eating my toast and my bacon in the morning before school. I'm watching the Jetsons. That's my favorite. It was my favorite cartoons. I was a big cartoon guy. So it's not surprising how you ended up falling into and loving television so much, because back in our day, I think I'm a little bit older than you, but back in our day, it's old folks. TV was like where it was at, man. And now there's so many new opportunities for you to get something like your project out on a network, which is really just a great opportunity to have, right?
Yeah, no, it totally is. And I think that back in the day, TV was really our only platform, I think, to connect in real time around what was happening in the world. So it started with the news in the morning, and in between the Jetsons and all those shows you mentioned, it was news. It was news at, from 6 a.m. to 9, then a little programming, then news again from 11 to 1, then soap operas, then news again. And I think what's changed so much is that everyone has, news in their hands on Facebook, Instagram, and all the different social media platforms, and you can feel connected and entertained through all the sort of micro and macro influencers that are creating content. We have literal content creators who are pumping out content all day long, the same way that all those different channels, if you were blessed to have cable, program the day for you. Now your phone and what's happening on your phone is sort of doing that, and TV is really secondary, and it's on your own terms now. You're not waiting for a channel to program throughout the day. You're going on demand, opening up the different apps on your TV, the Hulus, the Netflix, the HBO Max, whatever, and you're deciding what you want to watch, when you want to watch it. You're not waiting for, it to be prime time to sit and watch a prime time show. You might watch it at 11 a.m. after you watch the thing you decide to watch on your phone, or on YouTube.
That's right.
So the game has changed, but I do think content is still so powerful and such a lifeline for so many people. If you go to a dinner or a party, one of the short things you can discuss with someone, it probably will come much. What are you watching? What are you watching? It's a conversation. I still think, just like you and I growing up, it's still something that pulls us together more than anything else in life right now.
It is, man. And I absolutely love it. And I love what you're doing with PopViewers. Like I said, I want to talk more about that, because it really is an opportunity for you to really help bring people together even more around some, common topics and around things that really people might find enjoyable. You made an interesting point and a connection, and it just hit me when you said that. You remember, I think it was Comcast. Do you remember when they came out with the on-demand service?
Yep.
Remember that? I think it might have been Comcast. So one of those networks had that, and it just hit me when you said, I'm like, you know what? That was the beginning of it.
Yeah.
It was being able to go right and I don't want to watch that. I want to watch this right now. And it wasn't constrained by any time. You could just go and pick it up. First of all, it was when you could record. Remember when they had you could record. What did they call that thing?
DVR and then TiVo.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's right. And you record your show, and then you can watch it when you wanted to. So the on-demand piece that you just pointed to is, I think, huge, and it's right here in your hand. I can watch a whole movie right here on Netflix in my hand, which is crazy. And I love that you mentioned how, how entertainment it does. And I try to limit how much of it I watch, but you're so right, Chris, man. Anything at work, any conversation, whether I'm on a Google or Zoom or anything like that, one of the first things that comes up, oh my God, I watched Stranger Things last night. Where are you at right now? Oh, I'm on episode 5. Oh, I'm on season 3. It's like, it's a commonplace for people to connect, man. And I love that.
And I tell you, Bradford, it's not just a place to connect, it's a place to learn. And I think that the learning was great, but it was fairly limited in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. If you really stop as a viewer, I don't care where you live, because you could be, my mama lives in a small town in West Virginia that is country as heck. I'm going to try and not curse on this podcast.
That's all good. It's all good. Be you, man. Be you.
Okay, thank you. The fact that the same people in that town have Netflix, Paramount Plus, Hulu, all the same shows that I'm watching, where inclusivity and diversity, they are pushing barriers and breaking barriers like we've never seen before. The narratives and storylines around, non-binary characters, LGBTQ plus characters, Black women, Black men, all the tropes that we saw 10 years ago. You can find something that debunks all of those and more. There's things as a Black gay man that I'm watching on TV and I'm like, oh, I didn't even know. I didn't even know our community.
You getting educated.
Has so much nuance, and I think that's what's compelling. The commercials you see now, they're pushing the envelope and the boundaries in ways that you would never have seen 8 years ago, because I think that they're learning. Viewers want to be pulled out of their shell when they watch content, because there's enough now. There's enough out there now. If you want to live in your bubble, you can find the bubble to live in. But I think a lot of the content that's thriving with the networks, the Peacocks of the world, the Netflix, what they're investing in are shows and movies that really do encapsulate diversity and inclusivity in a way that they never allowed to happen before, because viewers are demanding it.
Very true. That's so true. And, I was thinking as you were talking, I'm like, you're right. It's an educational spot. And one of the things that is the intention behind my podcast, the Everything Matters podcast, is that everything matters, obviously. And I want to give everyone a voice to express, we get caught up as human beings into, my point of view versus your point of view, when we can all recognize that we all have a point of view, right? And it's not necessarily that anyone is right or wrong. It's just a point of view. It's just the way that you see the world. Right. So if I can give everyone an opportunity and a voice to express whatever their world is like, maybe, just maybe, Chris, we can have people come together in peace and harmony, man. I don't know. It's just, it's my big dream for the world, man. So I love it.
Bradford, sign me up for that. I'm of the school of Oprah back in the day. That's what Oprah did. A lot of folks that worship her and think she's so amazing, they forget that Oprah, she allowed her show to be a place that really, she could bring on people from the right, from way in the right corner. She could bring on folks that have committed the most heinous of crimes, but she used her show as a classroom. Let us understand why you did what you did. Let folks in the audience ask you questions about what you did. Let me be the person who really is the catalyst for conversation around these topics that are a part of the American zeitgeist right now. And I think we need to do more of that, because there is, maybe you might turn that show off when they used to be on, you would turn it off and you'd be upset and your feelings, but you might say, you know what? Actually, I want to talk about this at dinner tonight, because I learned something that I didn't know about a Klan member, or the mindset of a rapist, or the mindset of a killer, or any of those things. And I think that she was so ahead of her time. And I wish we had more people that had this broader, mentality around having conversations and engaging in civil discourse, because we do need it. We need it more.
We do. And you know what, Chris, you mentioned Oprah. You know who else was really a big catalyst in that? And I saw somebody posted a clip of content recently about an interview that he did back in the 90s. Donahue.
Oh, okay. So you went here. All right.
Bro, Donahue had Farrakhan on there. Louis Farrakhan. It was one of the most fiery conversations, because Farrakhan was a fireball, right? And he said whatever he said. He didn't care what anybody thought about it. I mean, he's a little bit different. He still does now, but he's calmed down a lot in his older age. But I mean, Donahue opened up the space. He asked some really tough questions to the audience as well as to Louis Farrakhan. There was another gentleman, one of the other brothers from the Nation of Islam. I can't remember his name. He passed away. Dark-skinned brother, bald-headed, who was even more radical than Farrakhan. And man, Donahue gave that guy a platform. I think he had him on there twice. Gave him a platform to talk about everything he wanted to talk about around racism and being Black in America and all these things that we deal with. I mean, it was fascinating. So you're absolutely spot on. Those conversations then were way ahead of their time. And with the woke culture now, and everybody's canceling people, it's like it makes it difficult for people to come have a conversation. It's about be real with people. Like, just tell the truth.
And you didn't get canceled. That's the part about it. You could go on Donahue, you can go on.
That's Oprah, right. Exactly.
And you didn't wind up being canceled. It was just this place for them to have you on, have engaging conversation, and just let America in on what your thought process is. But it's funny, you struck a chord with me whenever you mentioned Donahue, because I don't think I've talked about this in a podcast or anything yet. You're getting an exclusive. So when I was 5 or 6 years old, I want to say 5. So it was 19. I'm a date myself now. 1987. My very first time knowing I wanted to be a journalist, knowing that I wanted to one day be on TV, was Donahue. My grandfather, his name is Leonard Ritchie. May he rest in peace. And my grandmother, they were guests on the show. And it was a very big moment because back then, and again, growing up how we grew up, the TV was like the center place of our home. And in the 80s, it was very rare to know someone who had been on TV. You know, back then, a daytime talk show like Donahue might have averaged 10 million viewers a day. Now, the best talk shows that exist, if they're lucky, they'll get a 1.1, like 1.1 million viewers. Like, I don't care who the talk show is. It's just crazy. The eyeballs aren't there because the content viewing is very fragmented now. But my grandparents were on because my grandfather had lost his job. And the episode was about folks that had gone through really hardships in life that were still standing. And there was a guy on with my grandfather who had jumped from the Golden Gate Bridge. There was a guy on who had an alcohol abuse problem. But I'll never forget, my grandparents went and taped the show like on a Monday, and it aired on a Thursday or a Friday. And so we had a watch party. And I'll never forget being on my grandfather's lap because he was home when it actually aired. And as a kid, I couldn't understand how he was in the TV. And watching him on the stage the whole time in a beautiful suit. I'm on his lap, and I was his favorite. He was my favorite grandfather. And what's funny is I got older, I used to rewatch the VHS tape like every 3 months. I had memorized Donahue's intro, the questions he asked every guest, and I began to realize that my grandfather was on for something that was a point of shame. It was something a Black man in this country being on that show, wearing a suit on stage, and you're talking about your car getting repoed and all the different things you had gone through to get to that stage. But I couldn't have been more proud of him. I remember he didn't break, he didn't cry, he didn't blame anyone. He just talked about his next chapter and what he wants to do now that he was getting a job on the railroad again. And it was during the Reagan era and Reagan economics. But I'm giving you a long-winded story just to say that Donahue and seeing what Donahue did and then watching him and fanning out over him. And then a couple of years later, this heavyset Black woman on TV named Oprah, it sucked me in, and I never let it go. I never let it go.
Yeah, man. It's crazy how the things shape us, right? How things in life shape us. It's amazing.
No, it is. You just never know. You never know what you're absorbing that's going to come out on the other side as fuel and motivation for your dreams. So true. So true. So let's talk about dreams, Chris. I want to talk about your journey as an entrepreneur. Now, you founded a company called PopViewers, PopViewers, PopViewers. And it sounds to me, honestly, as reading about what it is and the platform, it sounds like a modernized Siskel and Ebert, right? Which is kind of dope. I like that idea. I used to watch those guys all the time to figure out what movies to go see and what shows to go watch. And it's a platform that helps people find what to watch, and it invites people to react to the TV and the movies that they've watched and encourages them to share the experience. And again, I see community that you're doing here. I see how you're bringing people together again, Chris, right? Experience with fellow content lovers, right? Tell us how the idea came about, Chris. Tell us how it came about and what impact you're hoping that this makes in the world. Yeah. So how it came about, we talked about earlier, me being a journalist for several years. And about 3 or 4 years ago, I was really frustrated. I was at a place where I was screening so many films and TV shows in advance. When you're someone like me, entertainment journalist, you get invited by all the film studios and networks to come watch them, sometimes 6 months to 9 months before they ever hit a theater or they ever see the light of day. And during that time, they're really the studios kind of trying to get the understanding of what the critics and the journalists feel about the content. They're trying to get you to write very early lead pieces about these shows or films. And what I began noticing was when I go to these screenings that there's so much groupthink that happens. I would always, and I still do, since I was a kid, because it was a very rare treat, I always sit in the front of the movie theater and I would be hurting my neck, but it's like, as a kid, I wanted to be immersed in whatever Arnold Schwarzenegger was doing, or immersed in whatever was going on. So to this day, I still do that. But I began noticing a few years ago when I looked behind me in the theater, there was a sea full of primarily white men at these very early lead screenings. And when I walk out, I'd listen to the conversations that were being had about shows and films that were very, very diverse, that weren't really meant for that audience. I don't think the end intention of the creators was to, get the sign on from white male critics. And I recognized that, there's just a lack of diversity in the critic space. More than 80% of critics right now for major media outlets are white and they're male. And the audience of folks that are consuming content and really driving culture right now are Black folks. So at that moment, I was like, okay, I know the importance of engagement on mobile devices. I know that as Black people, as Latinos, we really over-index on engagement on mobile devices. So I said, how can I create an app that's a mobile platform that helps all audiences, Black or white, discover new content, react to what they're watching, find their latest binge or what to watch in theaters, rate shows so that we do have a score that can offset what the critic scores are on so many major platforms, but that really becomes also a place for analytics for the studios to really understand what diverse audiences are engaging with and why they're engaging with it. Because what a lot of folks don't realize is that every studio, every platform that exists right now, because there's so much content, they are making data-driven decisions. Sorry, I can't speak data-driven decisions. And used to be with the TV network, it was just based on ratings of things like the show you were doing. But Nielsen's not tracking how you're viewing content on your phone. Nielsen can't track if you got a Netflix account and your auntie and them are sharing it with you, which most folks do.
That's right.
So a lot of the networks are finding pain points with the Nielsen multi-billion-dollar analytics system.
I bet.
And then with the film industry, no one can predict the film industry. People think they know how a film's going to do when it hits theaters, but it'll come out and over-index, like a film like Megan, this sci-fi film that came out recently. The fans love this movie. Cocaine Bear that's out right now. They made so many millions over what was expected from critics because critics aren't always getting it right. So for us, it's about having a platform. We're available now in the Apple App Store that allows people to engage around content and really bridges that sort of divide between the studios and the content creators and what folks are feeling. And helping to make better content.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. I got a friend of mine, Amanda Kazi is her nickname. She's got probably 500,000 followers on YouTube, and she does these content reactions. She's also a filmmaker. But she'll watch a film that's coming out and she'll sit there and just watch it and react. And she's got all these people that follow her and they just want to see how she reacts to it. And, what it gives people is opportunity to see how she responds, how she reacts. And they'll say, okay, I think I like what Kazi said about that. I'm going to go check it out. So I imagine when I was reading about your app, I was thinking it would be someone like her who would maybe watch a show or maybe watch certain small clips of content, give their reaction to it, and people who are following them and watching that or subscribers to PopViewers would say, hey, I'm going to go check that out too. That was pretty cool.
That's exactly what it is. And I think that please tell Kazi to pull up, to download the app to pull up. Maybe we can partner with her. And she can get the YouTube fans to come over to PopViewers. But also, when I was creating the idea or the platform, to me, it's always about word of mouth is so much more powerful. I can see, like, I'm watching a show right now called Raising Kanan on Stars. If you watch the Power franchise, it's part of the Power franchise. But I had seen billboards for Raising Kanan. I had heard about it all over the place on my social media feed. It wasn't until my brother, who I know he really is a content snob, although he's a police officer, a prison guard. He's in the prison guard, doesn't have a job in the entertainment space, but he always picks out good shows and movies that I know I'm gonna like it. For me so often. And he told me to watch, kept saying, Chris, please watch Raising Kanan. Here's my Stars login. Stars, don't get mad at me. And And I watched it this past weekend. I am obsessed and telling everybody about it. But the idea of PopViewers really is that word of mouth cosign. We can see a movie poster till we're blue in the face, but I think it's human beings and humans reacting. And if you're following folks on our platform who they put you on to shows or your latest binge already, you're going to say, all right, what are they watching? What are the shows they're watching this weekend? What have they said about it? And I think if you're trying to buy a ticket to a show or decide to subscribe to a platform, it helps to hear what real people have said about said content or show. Yeah.
No doubt about it, man. No doubt about it. Yeah. Like I said, I mentioned Stranger Things earlier. I'm like a big fan. And I didn't start watching it till it probably had been out for almost 3 years and I hadn't watched it. And my kids kept telling me, Dad, you need to watch Stranger Things. I was like, maybe. And then I heard a couple people at work talk about it. You're not watching. And I started feeling bad. Like, what am I missing over here? Right. So I'm like, okay. Yeah. So I started watching it and I became a fan. I went to the they have an exposition here in Atlanta, Stranger Things. We took pictures, got T-shirts and everything. Had a great time. Me and a couple of my daughters. I mean, really great. And I think you're right. I think it's the word of mouth and people sharing it. Ozarks was another one that I didn't watch for years.
Yep.
I mean, and then somebody started talking about it. I was like, okay, let me go check this out. I've got 3 or 4 people now that are saying you need to watch Ozarks. And like your brother, they know what I probably would like. So it's them telling me about it. I gave it a shot and now I became a fan of Ozarks. I downloaded I don't know if you're Chris. Have you got the soundtrack for Ozarks?
No. You know what, Bradford? You might be more of a super fan of some of these shows than me. And I like that. I'm going to download it. So let me get my phone open right now.
Soundtrack.
Okay.
Ozark soundtrack is so sick. I mean, it goes from Nas to it's just Biggie. It's got everything across the spectrum. So
I'll tell you really fast, Bradford, if I still have you, I'll tell you really fast. One of our goals next year is to begin working with some of the record labels to help people identify and connect to the music that is in these shows. Like that's something that a lot of folks don't realize. They're passively consuming it. They're passively consuming it, and it becomes part of the sort of dopamine rush you get from watching a show. But it's infused in. You'll never hear more than 30 seconds of a song on a show.
That's right.
But it's in there, and it's a driving force, and a lot of it is they spend a ton of money on getting these snippets of these songs for these shows, but then it doesn't really live anywhere. So for us, it's about infusing that opportunity for our users to identify what songs are in shows, to immediately download the songs or the soundtracks or build their own their soundtrack from a show. But it's something that I think it just enriches the viewing experience in 2023.
Chris, you own to something right there, man. Really on to something, because I'm a music guy. So no matter what I'm watching, I'm always listening to the music in the background, and because it helps me to remember certain scenes. Like when I hear that song, that clip, I'm like, bro, this is when such and such was doing that. But they was walking down, on Broad Street when this happened, or they was getting ready to have a fight when this happened. Like it brings me back to that scene. And music has that way of really just pulling you in, to a scene. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of it subconscious, like you said. It's subconscious. You may not recognize it consciously, but it has a huge impact on the effect and how you experience the content, right? Big time.
Yes.
Chris, we'd be remiss, man, if we didn't talk about season 2 of Founding in Color that is currently live on Comcast NBC. This is a mouthful right here, Chris. Hold on a second. Comcast, NBC Universal, Lyft Labs on the Peacock network, right? And this highlights 11 founders of color, Latino and Black, and talks about their stories and their journeys as founders and bringing their companies to life. So first of all, Chris, tell us how that opportunity came about for you as a founder of PopViewers. And then secondly, tell us about that experience. Like, what did you share there? And I know there's clips that we can point people to as well. And maybe we can drop one. Well, I probably get rights to do that. I can't do it to put it in my podcast. But you can go to the website. We'll get that at the end of the podcast to go and check out Chris in this series. So it's a docu-series. So Chris, tell us about how that came about, that opportunity. And again, what that was like for you and what was your intention of going on there? What did you want to accomplish by being on there as a cast member?
Yeah. A mutual friend of mine, I want to say it was in the summer, late summer, early fall, a mutual friend of mine introduced me to Isa Asawada, who is the creator of Founding in Color and the executive producer. And she works within Comcast and Comcast Lyft Labs. This is her baby.
Gotcha.
And me and Isa hit it off. And she was like, Chris, I was meeting you for something totally different. But now that I met you and I feel your energy and I know your story, I would love to consider casting you in season 2 of this show. So I'm going to have you, I'm going to pass you off to the Revolt team. They partnered with Revolt to produce the series and to shoot the series, to edit it, all that. And best of luck. And I did the casting, and I really, can I be honest, Bradford, I didn't think I would get in. I'm like, one, I think one, I don't always fit. I don't think I fit sometimes what a CEO normally, how a CEO normally talks and carries themselves. And also I think that because I do entertainment journalism, it's been my backstory. A lot of folks might not find me as interesting as someone who they know nothing about. I kind of came into the show with people knowing a little bit about what I do and knowing how to do TV. But can I tell you, it was an amazing experience. My intention, you asked me, my intention was for me to show vulnerability, to be a side of myself that I don't get to be when I normally go on TV. So normally when you go on TV, when you're a journalist, you cover stories. You aren't the story. You cover stories. You don't. No one, folks that see me on NBC, on the Today Show, on MSNBC, they don't know much about me. Much about you. It's good because you're able to go on and you're talking about the film, the show, the actor who's has some drama around them, whatever. Yes. For me, it was a very vulnerable experience. I got to be very authentic and real and discuss my personal story. My personal story has impacted my passion into creating my company. And we discussed a lot of that, but I also opened up about just like the difficulties of getting your company off the ground when you don't have family to call to write you seed funds. You have to really get creative. And that term bootstrapping got real for me real quick, Bradford.
I believe it. I had Marcus Jimenez on the podcast as well. And we just launched his episode this week. And, he talked about bootstrapping also. So I'm very familiar with that term. Literally, we had a whole segment of the podcast about bootstrapping and what his thoughts were about that. So I know you mentioned about your parents and, some of the struggle that they had financially. And I'd imagine that unless they hit the lottery, things are probably pretty close to where they were, then if they're both still around, hopefully. And same with me. Like, I didn't come from money either. So if I'm gonna go, I can't go call my mom and say, hey, can you give me 20 grand? It's not an option for me. Right. Mm-hmm. So what are some of the things that you did, in terms of being able to fund your project as a CEO and a founder? Like what resources did you use? What did you tap into to make your dream come true?
Yeah, to answer your question, first of all, my father passed away in 2017, so may he rest in peace. My mother is still alive and thriving and doing well, and she's such a support system to me emotionally. She will say a prayer to get me through the whole entire week. Okay, that woman can pray.
Absolutely.
And the power of prayer got me through in a big way. But I think pulling from my little savings that I had, I put all of my savings into my company back when we first were getting off the ground. But a second thing I did was I knew that when I was building and growing PopViewers, for me, I couldn't have a contract as talent and do both. I knew that I needed to know that I was all in on this company, on this idea, on bringing this big dream to life. So I began driving Lyft. And one of the things that was, again, very, very humbling for me, when I first began driving Lyft, I felt some shame around it a couple of years ago, because here I am, college educated, a man of a certain age. I've been on the Today Show dozens and dozens of times. I go on at the time, the Wendy Williams show was still on. I was going on Wendy Williams show all the time. I was going on MSNBC, CNN. I've been a former CNN analyst, but I got to go get my car that I had to pay each month a lease for, because I got to pay bills. At the time, I had an 8-year-old son or 9-year-old son. I got rent. I have all these things, and I also have to find a way to fuel this company, get this prototype build, buy all the different little domains and things you need to have a company and have a real LLC. So I bet on me. I'd be out driving all hours of the day. Hours of the day and night, rain, snow, you name it. I did it for a full year while I was launching my company. And by the time June rolled around, I had found an angel investor who I didn't even really pitch that hard. But what's funny, Brad, when I say I turned my shame from strategy, what I began doing was I began using my car after a couple of months to talk about my idea, my company. What I began realizing that there were some folks that got in the car that wanted to know about me. I don't know if it's my energy, my nature. Yeah. A lot of folks didn't want to talk, but most of them would say, so, Chris, how long have you been driving for? And I would be first, I was real quiet. I was like someone who was like, a covert operation. I would answer on one word, answer well, no one knowing it was me. I have my sunglasses on. I was like, God forbid someone takes pictures of me.
Right.
And down the line, this gets out,
Right. That's funny.
Then I began to lean into it, and I would actually turn around, not with the car, I would turn around and I would say, oh yeah, my background is X, Y, and Z, but I'm working on this startup idea. And I began to ask them, would you use this? I would say to them, like, what are you watching right now? How'd you hear about it? Who told you about it? Why are you watching that? What's coming up for you whenever you watch it? And I began to say, I'm creating this thing. I'm so curious, would you use it? And why would you use it? And I began to use my car literally as a focus group, throughout the day and the week. And I would keep on my phone. I began to keep notes in my notes section from different passengers. It's one of those things that some of them did follow me on Instagram. And when we launched the company, I had so many folks DM me and say, oh my God, you did it. You really did it.
That's awesome, man. Hell of a story. You basically, what I'm hearing you say, Chris, is, man, when you really want something, nothing can hold you back, right? I mean, you're willing to put your ego, your pride to the side and say, hey, this is what I want. I'm going for it. I don't care if I got to drive Uber, Lyft, whatever I got to do, because I know this is what I'm committed to. And I want to ask everybody who's listening to the podcast right now, me and you, Chris, look directly in the camera. What's your excuse? Because the Everything Matters podcast the motto is conversations that propel performance. Because inside of people having a voice, I also want to propel people to go do what you can do. Get out of your own way. Go chase your dreams. If Chris can drive Uber and Lyft to go and fund his company, then damn it, what can you do? Right?
Yes.
I'm doing the same thing. I work a full-time job as a sales effectiveness coach. And I'm building my own coaching business on the side. I finish my day from 8:30 in the morning till 5:30, and I get on my own stuff for 2-3 more hours before I do dinner. So there ain't no excuses, man, when you want something, right? And when you're committed to it. So I love that you shared that, Chris. And that's so inspiring for me, man, to get up. I got to work extra hour tonight, man, because you just set me on. You just set me on fire.
Well, first of all, thank you for receiving that. And I hope your audience feels inspired and just knows that, like, to your point, that anything's possible as long as you have passion and a vision. You have to see yourself on the other side before anybody else sees you on the other side. And the more you can see yourself there, you'll figure out what you got to do to get there. And I love Steve Harvey, who's one of our partners in our company now. He talks about how everyone in life, there's a house, there's a big old mansion, and there's doors in it. And there's certain doors that are just for you, but you got to walk through. You got to walk through different floors. You got to walk through different parts of that house. You can't be afraid to knock on the door. Right. And what he says is, when one door closes, a job you get fired from, a relationship ends, someone tells you no when you really thought they were going to tell you yes. He said, when a door shuts, all you got to do is get up and walk down the hallway. Because it's more doors. It's more doors in that building, in that mansion, that are just for you. You have to keep knocking on those doors. And for me, he said that, but I like to add to it that sometimes when you're in a building or a mansion, whatever, you got to know that sometimes you got to climb up flights of stairs. And when you're climbing, there aren't doors. There aren't doors on the flights of stairs. So you got to someone's going to be walking up them flights of stairs, waiting to get to your dream. And you have to have the resilience, the tenacity to know you might not get to even knock. You're driving, you're dreaming, you're head down and you're working. And just know that that's a part of the grind. And climbing stairs are hard. You get exhausted, but you have to take a break, sit down, take a nap, and get back up and keep walking, because you will get to a hallway with doors, and you will get to find that door that's just for you.
Absolutely, man. Love it. Drop the mic on that one, Chris. Drop the mic, man. So, one of the questions I like to ask, and we'll kind of start bringing it down to a close. It's been a great conversation, man. Really, really great. So, I want to, at the end, we'll just give people an opportunity to know how to find you. Like, I'm following you on social media and stuff, and I want to invite everybody else to do that. But I wanted to ask you a question, that I ask all my guests. You're a very inspiring guy. So what, and you have a son. So when it comes to young people, right, the message that you want to leave, the impact, the imprint that you want to leave on young people, by all the work that you're doing with your life's work, what do you want that message to be? What do you want people to be left with after they run and meet Chris?
Okay. Yeah, I say this a lot. So maybe your audience never heard me talk before, so they never heard this. But when I was 17, I was young, and I had found that I was getting into Ohio University. It was probably the worst time of my life. My family had been evicted for the third time. And at this point, we were houseless. So normally my parents found a house to live in 3 days. This time that just didn't happen. So we were living in the basements of different relatives. But somehow I got into college in this very awful time, this 6-month period. All of our stuff was in storage. It was just awful. I got into college, and it was my sign. It was my sign. I was like, Chris, life's going to change for you. This is about to be your best life. You're going to live your best life. But I was at I was at church one day, and the pastor shouted me out about going to Ohio University. And I was so embarrassed. And, but it's a big thing in the church. When you go to college, they shout you out.
Yeah, I know, right?
My church mother, who never spoke to me, she never really talked to me more than just like, "Hey, brother Chris." She gave me a hug, and she said, "When you go away to college, when you start your life, if you don't see the example, be the example." And I didn't really get what she meant by that. I didn't get what she meant, but I remember when I got to college in September, my first day, I was so lonely. I didn't know one person, 20,000 kids. I didn't know one person. And most of my campus was 20,000 kids, and only less than 10% were minorities. So that's Indian, Asian, Black, all of it. And I realized what she meant when she said that I had to walk into my classes as a Black kid from the wrong side of the tracks and be the example, speak up, raise my hand, ask questions, demand to have a seat at the table and sit close to the front of the room. When I got to New York City and got to my Good Morning America internship, when I walked in, very same thing. I was one of the only people of color that were interning back then. I got what she meant when she said that. And throughout my career, I recognized that I might not always see the example of someone who's like me doing what I believe I'm capable of doing, but I step up and I be that example. So I would say anybody young, just know whatever it is that you want to do, don't be afraid if you don't see someone who looks like you or who did it before you, you do it. You be the example.
Yeah, I love it, man. Love it. And Chris, I want to go back, if you can take another couple minutes, I want to go back and the founding in color docu-series that you're a part of. And one of the things that I'm intrigued by is having all 11 you all. Did you get a chance to meet all the other 10 people in the cast?
I did.
Okay, good.
I did, yeah.
So, there's a ton of value, right, in bringing people together who have a common mission or common goal. Even though y'all are working on different projects, you're sort of headed in the same direction to get your project off the ground and get it funded, get it founded, and actually get it out into the world. What was, if you could pick one thing, like what was one of your biggest takeaways that you took from being in that environment with 10 other founders of color, Black and Latino? What did you learn from that experience? What did you take away from either one of them or the whole group experience? What did you get?
I took away, I think, business minds. It's important to have a business mindset of longevity. So my episode, it was episode 1. It is episode 1. When you guys watch it, you will see me. The second episode is people that are really growing and scaling their business. Then the third episode is like, you've got there. You've at this point, you've either raised millions and millions of dollars, or you are having a lot of revenue. But what I recognize is that I think sometimes when you're in the startup phase, especially in the tech space, but I think in any startup, people have this mindset. Some of the folks around you have this mindset of the Facebook movie. The Facebook movie was 90 minutes, and Mark Zuckerberg went from his dorm room to everyone and their mother knocking on his door from Silicon Valley to invest $100 million in his company. And the company became huge. Facebook became very huge in a very quick time. So did Snapchat and a bunch of other companies. I think that people have this idea that you're going to have this $1 billion unicorn, or they feel a pressure to have this $1 billion unicorn company in 90 minutes or in a year or in 2 years. And what I really took from it is like the proper business mindset is that it's going to take you 7 years to a decade to really grow your business, and to not be afraid of taking time to do so. I heard a quote that they said, people underestimate what they can do in 1 year, and people overestimate what they can do. Let me get this quote right. Okay. People overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 10 years. So I think it's just so important to have that business mindset of longevity. Yes. Most of the companies, the brick and mortar companies that we love and that we adore, that are part of the everyday fabric of our homes, have been around for decades. And so just know that in their first 5 years, you probably didn't even hear of them. So I think that remove this sort of sprint mindset that we think of when we think of startups, and be in that marathon mindset. That's what I learned from those founders. Those other founders that I was with, I would say 7 of them have been at this for 5 years plus years. Wow. And they're thriving, but they talk about how year 1 and year 2 and year 3 and year 4, how they had expectations of it was going to be an overnight success. And it's not the case most time, especially for Black and brown founders.
Yeah, I dig it, man. I mean, it's you go from concept to actually getting a prototype built, and I imagine with your app, you get a prototype built, and you got to find all the right people with the right technical skills, the right knowledge. I mean, all the things, a lot has to come together. Hell, it might take a year just to get those pieces together, right? Okay, now we can start. I can't start for 12 months, just like arranging everything. And what I hear you saying is the same thing that you said earlier that Steve Harvey said, bro, just keep climbing the stairs. Just keep climbing. Just keep climbing. It might take a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Stay on the stairs. Eventually you'll get to your destination. I love that.
That's it.
I love it.
That's it, Bradford.
Chris, man, how can people follow you? How can they learn more about you? Where can they find you on social media? Where do they go?
Listen, my social media handles everywhere are just my last name, Witherspoon, C. So WITHERSPONC. You can also follow PopViewers on social media at PopViewers. That's POPVIEWERS. And you can download us today in the Apple App Store.
Awesome. Chris, I'm a Google guy, man. When is it going to come to the Play Store? How long I got to wait?
We're building it. We're going to get it launched very soon. Our whole goal is to really perfect what we have right now. This launched in the Apple App Store, and keep learning from our users. And then in probably the next season of this year, we will release the Android, which will be a version 2.0 of PopViewers.
All right, cool, man. I'm going to hold you to that. Send me your number because I'm going to text you. Chris, when are we going to get this on the Android, man? Don't leave me hanging.
Oh, you get the upgraded version, Bradford. You get the upgraded version. So you get an even better version than our Apple users have.
I love it. Chris, man. So great to have you on the podcast, man. I really appreciate your time, and keep doing what you're doing, man. Keep being an inspiration to other people. And, you're welcome back to come anytime, man. Welcome back anytime. Love to have you.
You don't got to tell me twice. I'll be back very soon. Thank you, Bradford.
All right, brother. Take care, man.
This is Doris Brown's baby boy. We out.